What would you do if one unforgettable night gave you everything you ever wanted and took it away before sunrise? Amara never imagined that attending a charity gala in Seoul would change her life forever. She thought she was going for networking opportunities and a free meal. Instead, she met a man who would become the greatest love of her life and the source of her deepest heartbreak. 5 years later, that single night would still haunt both of them, but neither of them knew that yet. The sparkling lights of Seoul reflected beautifully against the Han River as luxury cars lined up outside one of the city's most prestigious hotels. Inside, the annual charity gala was already in full swing. Amara adjusted the sleeve of her elegant navy blue dress and took a deep breath. "Relax," she whispered to herself. As an international student from Africa studying business in Seoul, she felt slightly out of place among the wealthy businessmen, celebrities, and social elites filling the ballroom. Still, she had worked hard to earn her invitation. Tonight could open doors for her future. She grabbed a glass of juice from a passing waiter and quietly observed the crowd. Everyone seemed to know everyone. Everyone except her. "Maybe I should have stayed home," she muttered. That would have been a terrible decision. The deep male voice startled her. She turned around and found herself staring into the most striking eyes she had ever seen. The man standing before her was tall, handsome, and effortlessly confident. His black suit fit perfectly. His calm expression carried a quiet power that immediately caught her attention. For a brief moment, neither spoke. Then he smiled, and somehow the crowded room disappeared. "I'm Ji-Hoon," he said, extending his hand. Amara hesitated before shaking it. Amara. The moment their hands touched, an unfamiliar feeling rushed through her. Something she couldn't explain. Something she wasn't prepared for. Ji-Hoon noticed her nervousness and smiled again. "First gala? Is it that obvious?" "A little." Amara laughed. The sound surprised even her. She hadn't expected to feel comfortable around a complete stranger so quickly. For the next hour, they talked about everything. Business, travel, family, dreams, their favorite foods, their biggest fears. The conversation flowed naturally, as if they had known each other for years. For the first time since arriving in Korea, Amara felt truly seen. Not judged, not pitted, not treated like an outsider. Just seen. What she didn't know was that Ji-Hoon felt exactly the same. Most people approached him because of his wealth and influence. Amara had no idea who he really was, and he liked it that way. For once, someone was interested in the man, not the money. As the evening continued, the connection between them deepened. They danced. They laughed. They shared stories beneath the soft glow of crystal chandeliers. Hours passed without either noticing. Yet behind Ji-Hoon's calm smile, danger was quietly approaching. His phone vibrated repeatedly inside his jacket pocket. He ignored it. Then it vibrated again. And again. Finally, he glanced at the screen. His expression changed instantly. Amara noticed. "Everything okay?" For a second, Ji-Hoon didn't answer. His jaw tightened. A look of concern flashed across his face. Then he quickly forced a smile. "Just work." But it wasn't work. It was far worse. A violent conflict had broken out inside the criminal empire he secretly controlled. An empire few people knew existed. An empire built on power, loyalty, and fear. And right now, it needed its king. Immediately, Ji-Hoon looked at Amara. For the first time that night, he seemed torn. Part of him wanted to stay. The other part knew he couldn't. Not if he wanted to keep her safe. "I need to leave." The disappointment in Amara's eyes was impossible to miss. "Oh, I don't want to go." The honesty surprised both of them. Amara felt her heart skip. Neither wanted the night to end. Outside the hotel, cool air filled the streets. The city lights shimmered around them. For a few moments, they stood together in silence. Neither knowing what to say, neither wanting to say goodbye. Then Ji-Hoon gently reached for her hand. "Can I see you again?" Amara smiled. "I'd like that." For the first time that evening, Ji-Hoon looked genuinely happy. He leaned forward slightly. Their eyes met. The world around them seemed to disappear. And then they shared a kiss.
Soft.
Gentle. Unforgettable. A kiss that felt like the beginning of something beautiful. Neither of them realized it would also become the beginning of something far more complicated. A black luxury vehicle suddenly pulled up beside them. Several serious-looking men stepped out. One approached Ji-Hoon immediately. "Sir, it's urgent." The man's tone left no room for argument. Ji-Hoon's face hardened. The warm, charming man Amara had spent the evening with seemed to disappear in an instant. Something about him suddenly felt different. Dangerous. Powerful. Unreachable. He turned back to her one last time. "I'll call you." Amara nodded. "Okay." She watched as he climbed into the vehicle and disappeared into the Seoul night. What she didn't know was that Ji-Hoon was heading into a war. And what Ji-Hoon didn't know was that he had just walked away from the woman carrying his future. A future that would remain hidden from him for 5 long years. Have you ever loved someone so deeply that letting them go felt like breaking your own heart? Amara stared at the pregnancy test for what felt like hours. 2 pink lines.
Clear.
Unmistakable.
Real.
Her hands trembled as she sat on the edge of her bed. No. The word escaped her lips in a whisper. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was a student. She had dreams.
Plans.
Goals she had spent years working toward. A baby wasn't part of the plan. Especially not a baby whose father had disappeared without a trace. Tears slowly filled her eyes. Not because she didn't want the child, but because she suddenly felt completely alone. The first person she thought about was Ji-Hoon. She reached for her phone immediately. Maybe there had been a misunderstanding. Maybe he had lost her number. Maybe something had happened. There had to be an explanation. She called the number he had given her. The call didn't go through. She tried again. And again. Nothing. Days turned into weeks. Every message she sent remained unanswered. Every call failed. Every attempt to find him ended in disappointment. At first she was worried, then confused, then hurt. Finally, she became angry. "How could you just disappear?" she whispered one night. The man who had made her feel special. The man who had promised to call. The man she couldn't stop thinking about.
Gone.
As if he had never existed. One afternoon, while searching online, Amara froze. A familiar face appeared on her laptop screen. It was Ji-Hoon. But the article beneath the photo made her stomach drop. Kang Ji-Hoon, Korea's youngest billionaire business mogul. Billionaire? Amara blinked. She clicked the article. Then another. And another. The more she read, the more shocked she became. The man she thought was an ordinary businessman was one of the most powerful men in South Korea. His companies were worth billions. His name appeared in magazines, business journals, and international news reports. There were photographs of him attending meetings with politicians, investors, and global leaders. His world was completely different from hers. Suddenly, everything made sense. The expensive suit, the security around him, the urgent phone calls, the mysterious men who came for him that night. He had never lied to her, but he had never told her the whole truth either. Amara closed the laptop slowly. A painful realization settled in her chest. Maybe someone like Ji-Hoon had simply forgotten about her. Maybe that night meant more to her than it did to him. The thought hurt more than she wanted to admit. Weeks later, her pregnancy began to show. Morning sickness became a daily battle. Simple tasks became exhausting. She attended classes while hiding her growing secret. But eventually, reality became impossible to ignore. She was going to be a mother, and she had a decision to make. One evening, she sat alone in her apartment, gently resting a hand on her stomach. For the first time, she felt a small flutter. A tiny movement. Her baby. A smile appeared through her tears. At that moment, something changed inside her. She stopped focusing on the man who wasn't there, and started focusing on the child who was. "I promise I'll protect you," she whispered. No matter what. Months later, Amara made a difficult decision. She would return home to Africa. There, she would have family, support, people who loved her, people who would help her raise her child. Leaving Seoul wasn't easy. The city held too many memories. Every street reminded her of Ji-Hoon. Every memory reminded her of what could have been. But she knew staying would only make moving forward harder. The day her flight left, she looked out the airplane window one final time. Part of her hoped Ji-Hoon would somehow appear. Part of her hoped he would finally explain everything. But he never came. And the plane took off. Months later, after a long and difficult labor, Amara held her baby boy for the first time. The moment she saw him, every fear disappeared. He was beautiful, perfect. Tiny fingers wrapped around hers. Tears streamed down her face. "Hello, my little prince," she whispered. The nurse smiled. "Have you chosen a name?" Amara looked down at her son. A soft smile appeared. Malik. From that day forward, Malik became her entire world. The sleepless nights, the sacrifices, the struggles. None of it mattered when she looked at him. Years passed. Amara worked tirelessly. She built a small business, saved every penny, created a stable life for her son. It wasn't always easy. There were moments she cried after Malik fell asleep. Moments she wished she had someone to share the burden with. Moments she wondered if Ji-Hoon ever thought about her. But she never allowed regret to control her life. Malik grew into a bright, cheerful little boy. He had his mother's kindness, and without realizing it, he had his father's eyes. One sunny afternoon, Amara attended a community business event. A local photographer took pictures of the guests and posted them online. Amara didn't think much of it. She smiled for a photo with Malik and continued her day. Thousands of miles away, inside a luxury office overlooking Seoul, Ji-Hoon sat reviewing documents. He was richer, more powerful, more feared, but somehow more lonely than ever. His assistant placed a tablet on his desk. "Sir, this article might interest you." Ji-Hoon glanced at the screen casually, then froze. The world seemed to stop. His eyes locked onto a photograph. A woman he had never forgotten.
Amara.
Standing beside a little boy. A little boy with familiar eyes. Eyes that looked exactly like his. Ji-Hoon couldn't stop staring at the photograph. The image filled his tablet screen. Amara stood smiling beside a young boy. A young boy with familiar eyes.
His eyes.
For several seconds, Ji-Hoon simply sat there, silent, motionless. His assistant shifted uncomfortably. "Sir?" Ji-Hoon finally looked up. "Who is this child?" His voice was calm.
Too calm.
The kind of calm that made people nervous. The assistant swallowed. "The article doesn't say much. It only mentions that she owns a growing business and attended a community event." Ji-Hoon looked back at the photo. His chest felt strangely tight. 5 years. 5 long years. He had searched for Amara after that night. At first, he thought she had changed her number. Then, he discovered she had left Seoul. His investigators found nothing. It was as if she had vanished. Eventually, life and responsibilities pulled him back into the dangerous world he ruled. But he had never forgotten her. Not completely. Now she was suddenly standing in front of him again. Or, at least her picture was. And beside her stood a child who looked far too familiar. "Find everything you can." The assistant immediately nodded. "Yes, sir." Within hours, Ji-Hoon's private investigation team got to work. Nothing escaped them. Business records, travel history, public information, social media accounts. Every available detail was collected. The deeper they looked, the more uneasy Ji-Hoon became. The child's name was Malik. 5 years old. The timing matched perfectly. Too perfectly. Ji-Hoon tried to remain logical. Many children resembled people they weren't related to. Coincidences happened. But something deep inside him refused to dismiss it. Days later, a thick file landed on his desk. Ji-Hoon opened it immediately. Photographs. School records. Family information. Everything pointed toward one possibility. A possibility he wasn't ready to face. His trusted advisor, Mr. Choi, sat across from him. The older man had been with him for years. One of the few people Ji-Hoon truly trusted. After reviewing the file, Mr. Choi removed his glasses. "You already know what I'm going to say." Ji-Hoon remained silent. The dates match. Still silence. The age matches. Ji-Hoon's jaw tightened. Mr. Choi sighed. And if I'm being honest, sir, the resemblance is impossible to ignore. The room suddenly felt smaller. For years, Ji-Hoon had built an empire, acquired wealth, expanded his influence, defeated countless enemies. Yet nothing had prepared him for this moment. The possibility that he had a son he never knew existed, a son who had grown up without him. For the first time in years, guilt hit him hard. Where had Malik taken his first steps? Who taught him how to ride a bicycle? Who comforted him when he had nightmares? Who was there for his birthdays? Not him. Never him. Because he hadn't known. Ji-Hoon stood and walked toward the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking Seoul. The city stretched endlessly before him. Normally, the view calmed him. Today it did nothing. All he could see was a little boy's face. A little boy who might be his son. What if she kept him from me? He asked quietly. Mr. Choi thought carefully before answering. Or maybe she believed she was protecting him. The words lingered in the air. Protecting him. Ji-Hoon understood that better than anyone. His world was dangerous. Enemies watched his every move. Anyone connected to him became a target. If Amara had discovered the truth about his life, maybe she had left for a reason. Maybe she hadn't run from him. Maybe she had run from the danger surrounding him. That thought hurt even more. Because if it was true, then he had failed both of them. He sat back down. His decision was already made. Prepare my jet. Mr. Choi looked up. You're going yourself? Yes. Sir, it could be risky. Ji-Hoon didn't hesitate. If that boy is my son, I've already missed 5 years of his life. His voice became firm. I'm not missing another day. 2 days later, Ji-Hoon's private jet landed in Africa. The moment he stepped onto the runway, a strange feeling settled over him. Nervousness. Something he rarely experienced. He had faced armed rivals without fear. Negotiated billion-dollar deals without hesitation. Yet now his hands felt unusually tense. Because this wasn't business. This was personal. For the first time in years, something truly mattered. Someone truly mattered. Meanwhile, Amara was completely unaware. She spent the morning helping Malik prepare for school. The little boy ran around the house excitedly. Mama, where are my shoes? Exactly where you left them yesterday. Malik grinned. Then I have no idea where they are. Amara laughed despite herself. That's because you never put them where they belong. A few minutes later, they finally left the house. Neither noticed the luxury black vehicle parked across the street. Inside sat Ji-Hoon, watching, waiting. His heart pounded. 5 years. 5 years of questions. 5 years of wondering. And now there she was. Amara looked almost the same, maybe even more beautiful, more confident, more mature. She looked happy. Then Malik appeared beside her. Ji-Hoon's breath caught. The resemblance was even stronger in person. The same eyes, the same smile, even the way he tilted his head looked familiar. For a moment, Ji-Hoon forgot how to breathe. The little boy laughed at something Amara said. The sound reached him through the open window. And, unexpectedly, something broke inside him. Not from sadness. From regret. Because he had missed all of it. Every laugh. Every milestone. Every memory. 5 years gone forever. Suddenly, Malik looked in his direction. Their eyes met. For one brief second. Neither knew why. But something felt strangely familiar. Ji-Hoon's heart nearly stopped. Then Malik smiled innocently before turning away. The vehicle remained parked long after they disappeared from sight. Ji-Hoon sat there in silence. One truth had become impossible to ignore. Whether the DNA test confirmed it or not. Deep down, he already knew. That little boy was his son. The shock on Amara's face said everything. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Neither moved. Neither seemed able to believe what they were seeing. 5 years. 5 long years had passed since the last time they stood face to face. Yet somehow, the memories came rushing back instantly. Ji-Hoon. His name barely escaped her lips. He nodded slowly. Hello, Amara. The sound of his voice brought back emotions she had spent years trying to bury. Anger.
Love.
Heartbreak. Confusion. All of it returned at once. Before she could say another word, Ji-Hoon's phone rang. The serious look that crossed his face immediately caught her attention. He answered quickly. "What is it?" A voice spoke urgently on the other end. The longer Ji-Hoon listened, the darker his expression became.
His jaw tightened.
His eyes hardened. The same look Amara remembered from the night he disappeared. When the call ended, silence followed. "What happened?" she asked. Ji-Hoon looked at her, then toward the direction where Malik had gone inside the house.
His voice lowered.
"Someone knows about him." Amara frowned. "What do you mean?" Ji-Hoon took a deep breath. "This conversation can't happen here." Fear immediately settled in her stomach. The look in his eyes told her this wasn't a simple problem. This was something much worse. Later that evening, after Malik had fallen asleep, Amara sat across from Ji-Hoon in her living room. The atmosphere felt tense, heavy, uncomfortable. There were years of unanswered questions between them, years of pain. Yet neither started there, because something far more important was at stake. Ji-Hoon placed a file on the table. "I need you to listen carefully." Amara crossed her arms. "I'm listening." For a moment, he struggled to find the words. Then he said something that changed everything. "The life you read about online isn't the whole truth." Amara's stomach tightened. "What truth?" Ji-Hoon looked directly into her eyes. "My business empire isn't my only responsibility." She waited. Then he continued. "I also control one of the most powerful criminal organizations in Asia." The room went completely silent. Amara stared at him, certain she had heard him wrong. "What?" His expression didn't change. She laughed nervously, but the laugh quickly disappeared. "Because he wasn't joking." "You mean?" "Yes." Her heart started pounding. The realization hit her like a wave. Everything suddenly made sense. The secrecy, the security, the urgent calls, the dangerous-looking men, the way people obeyed him without question. It had never been just business. Ji-Hoon wasn't simply a billionaire. He was a king in a world she knew nothing about. A world built on power, loyalty, and violence. Amara slowly stood. "You should leave." "Amara, you should have told me. I was trying to protect you." She shook her head. "Protect me?" Her voice cracked. "For 5 years, I raised our son alone." Ji-Hoon looked stunned. The words hung in the air. "Our son." For the first time, she had acknowledged it. Neither of them spoke for several seconds. Then Ji-Hoon quietly asked, "He's really mine?" Amara's eyes filled with tears. There was never anyone else. The answer hit him harder than he expected. For years, he had prepared himself for uncertainty, for doubt. Instead, the truth arrived with heartbreaking simplicity. Malik was his son, his child, the child he never knew existed. Ji-Hoon lowered his head briefly, overwhelmed by emotions he rarely allowed himself to feel. When he looked up again, his eyes were different.
Softer.
Filled with regret. "I should have been there." Amara looked away, because hearing those words hurt almost as much as the years he missed. The next morning, Ji-Hoon officially confirmed what his heart already knew. The DNA results arrived. 99.99% match. Malik was his son. No questions. No doubts. No uncertainty. For several minutes, Ji-Hoon simply stared at the report. Then he smiled. A real smile. Perhaps the first genuine smile he had experienced in years.
But the moment didn't last.
Another call came. This one was far worse. Mr. Choi's voice sounded urgent. "Sir, we've intercepted communications." Ji-Hoon immediately became alert. "What kind of communications?" "They know." The smile vanished from his face. "Who knows?" There was a brief pause. Then came the answer. "The rival families." A cold chill ran through him, because he understood exactly what that meant. That evening, Mr. Choi arrived with additional intelligence reports. The situation was worse than expected. Several rival mafia groups had learned about Malik, not because they cared about the child, but because they cared about Ji-Hoon. In their world, family was weakness. Loved ones became targets, leverage, bargaining tools. Threats. For years, Ji-Hoon had carefully kept his personal life hidden. Now, everything had changed. His greatest secret had become his greatest vulnerability, and everyone knew it. Meanwhile, Malik remained blissfully unaware. He sat at the dining table drawing superheroes with crayons. Amara watched him quietly. Her chest tightened.
He was just a child.
An innocent little boy. He didn't deserve any of this. She suddenly understood why Ji-Hoon looked so worried. For the first time, the danger felt real. Very real. A loud knock at the front gate interrupted her thoughts. One of Ji-Hoon's security men rushed inside moments later. His face was pale. "Sir." Ji-Hoon immediately stood. "What happened?" The guard swallowed hard. "We caught a man hiding near the property." The room fell silent. Amara's heart nearly stopped. "A man," she whispered. The guard nodded. "He had a camera." No one needed to explain further. Someone had been watching them. Watching Malik. Watching her. Watching everything. Ji-Hoon's expression darkened instantly. The danger was no longer a possibility. It was already here. He turned toward Amara. For the first time, she saw genuine fear in his eyes. Not fear for himself. Fear for his son. Fear for her. Fear for the family he had only just found. And, in that moment, he made a decision. No matter what happened next, no one was going to touch his child. The following afternoon, while Malik played at a local park, a black Benz suddenly pulled up nearby. Two strangers stepped out and began walking directly toward him. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Parents and children filled the park. People walked past without paying attention. But across the street, one of Ji-Hoon's security men immediately noticed something was wrong. The two men weren't looking at the playground. They weren't looking at the other children. Their eyes were fixed on Malik. The guard reached for his earpiece. "Move now." Everything happened fast. One of the strangers smiled at Malik and crouched down. "Hey, little guy." Malik looked up innocently. Before the man could get any closer, two security agents appeared between them. The stranger's smile disappeared. The second man immediately turned and ran. Within seconds, chaos erupted. Parents grabbed their children. People screamed. The two men rushed back toward the van. The vehicle sped away before authorities could arrive. By the time everything was over, Malik was shaken but unharmed. The same could not be said for Amara. When Ji-Hoon arrived at the park, Amara was holding Malik so tightly that the little boy could barely move. Tears filled her eyes. The fear she had been trying to suppress finally broke through. "What if they had gotten to him?" she whispered. "What if your guards hadn't been there?" Ji-Hoon looked at his son, then at Amara. The thought alone made his blood run cold. For years, he had survived wars, betrayals, and assassination attempts. Nothing had ever frightened him the way this did, because for the first time, he had something he couldn't afford to lose. That evening, Ji-Hoon sat across from Amara in her living room. Neither had touched the tea sitting on the table. The room was silent, heavy. Finally, Ji-Hoon spoke. "You and Malik can't stay here anymore." Amara already knew what he was going to say.
No. His jaw tightened.
"Amara."
No.
She stood up immediately. "I'm not taking my son into your world." "Our son." The correction came quietly, but it landed heavily between them. Amara looked away. Ji-Hoon continued. "My world already found him." The words hit harder than she expected, because deep down, she knew he was right. The danger had already arrived. Ignoring it wouldn't make it disappear. Still, fear held her back. Seoul meant returning to the place where her heart had been broken. Returning to a life she didn't understand. Returning to Ji-Hoon. And that frightened her almost as much as the danger itself. That night, after Malik fell asleep, Amara sat beside his bed. She watched him sleep peacefully, completely unaware of how close he had come to being taken. Her eyes filled with tears. 5 years. Everything she had done was for him. Every sacrifice. Every sleepless night. Every difficult decision. She had spent years protecting him. But now she wasn't sure she could do it alone anymore. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Ji-Hoon stood at the doorway. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he quietly entered. He looked at Malik, his son, the child he had missed for 5 years, the child he barely knew, yet somehow loved already. He looks peaceful, Ji-Hoon said softly. Amara nodded. He always sleeps like this. A small smile appeared on Ji-Hoon's face. Good. Silence followed. Then he said something unexpected. I'm scared. Amara blinked. What? Ji-Hoon looked at Malik. Every day of my life, people have feared me. His voice remained calm. But yesterday, when I heard someone try to take him. He paused. For the first time, his mask slipped. I couldn't breathe. Amara stared at him. She had never seen this side of him before. The powerful billionaire. The feared mafia king. The man everyone obeyed. Standing there looking helpless. Like a father terrified of losing his child. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. What? Being a father. The honesty surprised her. I missed everything. His eyes remained fixed on Malik. His first words. His first steps. His first day of school. The regret in his voice was impossible to fake. For the first time, Amara saw how much those lost years hurt him. And for the first time, her anger softened slightly. 3 days later, the decision was made. Amara and Malik would travel to Seoul under heavy security. The risk was simply too great. The morning of their departure, Malik could barely contain his excitement. We're really going on a plane? Yes, Amara laughed. A big plane? Very big. Malik grinned. Does that mean I can look out the window? Ji-Hoon smiled. You can have the best seat. The little boy's face lit up instantly. And, before anyone realized what was happening, Malik grabbed Ji-Hoon's hand. The simple gesture froze both adults. Malik didn't seem to notice. To him, it felt natural. Ji-Hoon looked down at their joined hands. His chest tightened. 5 years late. But it was a start. Hours later, they arrived in Seoul. As the gates of Ji-Hoon's estate opened, Amara found herself speechless. The property looked less like a home and more like a private kingdom. Security teams monitored every entrance. Armed guards patrolled the grounds. High walls surrounded the estate. Everything screamed protection and danger. Malik, however, was fascinated.
Wow.
He pressed his face against the car window. Do people really live here? Ji-Hoon laughed softly. We do. The boy looked impressed. Amara was less certain. The mansion represented safety, but it also represented the world she had spent 5 years avoiding. Over the following weeks, something unexpected happened. Malik and Ji-Hoon grew closer. Very quickly. They played soccer together, shared meals together, watched movies together. Every day, Malik seemed to trust him a little more. And every day, Ji-Hoon found himself falling deeper into the role of father. One afternoon, while they were playing in the garden, Malik suddenly asked, Can I ask you something? Ji-Hoon smiled. Of course. The little boy hesitated, then quietly asked, Are you my dad? The world seemed to stop. Ji-Hoon's heart pounded. Across the garden, Amara froze. Waiting. Watching. Ji-Hoon slowly knelt in front of him. Yes. Malik stared at him.
For a long moment he said nothing.
Then a huge smile spread across his face.
Cool.
Ji-Hoon laughed in relief. And, before he could react, Malik threw his arms around him. The hug caught him completely off guard, but he held his son tightly, as if making up for 5 years of lost time. From the mansion balcony, Amara watched the moment unfold. And despite everything that had happened, she smiled. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future where they might actually become a family. What she didn't know was that someone inside the estate was secretly watching them too. Someone who had been reporting every move they made. Someone working for the enemy. By morning, a rival mafia leader knew exactly where Malik would be the next day. The information had come from inside Ji-Hoon's estate. Someone close to him had betrayed him. The realization hit hard. For years, Ji-Hoon had built his empire on loyalty. Trust was everything in his world. And now, someone within his own walls was feeding information to the enemy. That morning, Ji-Hoon sat in his office reviewing security reports. His expression grew darker with every page. Across from him, Mr. Choi remained silent. Finally, Ji-Hoon closed the file. Who had access to this information? Only a handful of people. Then one of them is lying. The room fell quiet, because both men knew what that meant. The enemy wasn't outside the gates. The enemy was already inside. Meanwhile, life inside the mansion continued as normally as possible. At least for Malik. The little boy was happier than he had been in weeks. He loved exploring the massive estate. He loved asking endless questions. And most of all, he loved spending time with Ji-Hoon. The bond between father and son grew stronger every day. One afternoon, they were playing soccer in the garden when Malik kicked the ball directly into a flower bed. Oh no!
Ji-Hoon laughed.
That was definitely not a goal. It was close. It wasn't even facing the goal. Malik burst into laughter. Watching them from the terrace, Amara couldn't help smiling. There was something beautiful about seeing them together. Something that softened her heart. For years, she had imagined what kind of father Ji-Hoon might have been. Now she was seeing the answer for herself. He wasn't perfect, but he genuinely loved his son. And that mattered. Later that evening, Amara found herself alone with Ji-Hoon in the mansion's library. The room was quiet.
Warm.
Comfortable. For the first time in years, they weren't arguing. They weren't discussing danger, or security, or the past. They were simply talking, like they used to. Amara smiled as she closed the book she had been reading. I forgot how much you talk when you're relaxed. Ji-Hoon looked amused. I'll take that as a compliment. It wasn't. He laughed. The sound surprised her, because it reminded her of the man she met 5 years ago. Not the billionaire, not the mafia king, just Ji-Hoon. For a moment, neither looked away. The silence between them felt different now.
Softer.
More intimate. Then Ji-Hoon spoke quietly. I missed you. Amara's heart skipped. She wasn't expecting that. His eyes never left hers. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. He paused. But not a single year passed without me thinking about you. The honesty in his voice made it difficult to look away. For years, she had imagined what she would say if she ever saw him again. She had imagined being angry. Instead, she found herself remembering why she fell for him in the first place. And that scared her, because falling in love had already broken her once. The next morning, Ji-Hoon received disturbing news. One of his security officers had intercepted suspicious communications. After hours of investigation, the truth finally emerged. The traitor had been found. The betrayal shocked everyone, especially Ji-Hoon. The person responsible wasn't a new employee. It wasn't an outsider. It was someone who had worked for him for years. Someone he trusted. Someone who had eaten at his table, protected his family, and looked him in the eye while secretly helping his enemies. When the man was brought into Ji-Hoon's office, his hands were shaking. You sold information about my son. The accused man lowered his head. He couldn't deny it. The evidence was overwhelming. Why?
Ji-Hoon asked.
The man swallowed hard. They threatened my family. The room remained silent. They said they'd kill them. For a brief moment, nobody spoke, because fear was something everyone understood. But betrayal was still betrayal. The damage had already been done. Ji-Hoon stared at him for several seconds, then quietly said, You should have come to me. The man lowered his head further, filled with shame. The discovery created a new problem. If one person had betrayed them, how many others were involved? No one knew, and that uncertainty made everything more dangerous. Security around the mansion was immediately increased. Travel plans were changed. Meetings were cancelled. Every precaution was taken. But deep down, Ji-Hoon knew something. The enemy was preparing for something bigger. Much bigger. That evening, Amara found Ji-Hoon standing alone on a balcony overlooking the city. The lights of Seoul stretched endlessly below. He seemed lost in thought. She walked over quietly. Couldn't sleep? He smiled slightly. Not tonight. She leaned against the railing beside him. For several moments, neither spoke. Then Amara asked, Do you ever get tired? Ji-Hoon looked at her. Tired of what? carrying everything. The question caught him off guard, because very few people ever asked how he felt. Most only cared about what he could provide, not what he carried. After a moment, he nodded. Every day. Amara's expression softened. Without thinking, she reached for his hand. The gesture surprised both of them, but neither pulled away. For the first time in years, the distance between them felt smaller, almost gone. Ji-Hoon looked at her, his eyes filled with emotions he could no longer hide. Slowly, he stepped closer. Amara's heart raced. She knew she should walk away. She knew she should protect herself. But she couldn't. Not anymore. The feelings she had spent years burying were still there, waiting. And before either of them could stop it, they kissed. Softly, like two people finding their way back to each other. For a brief moment, everything felt right. The danger,
The fear.
the years apart, all of it disappeared. Amara smiled softly and lowered her eyes. I should check on Malik. Ji-Hoon nodded reluctantly. He's probably supposed to be asleep. A small laugh escaped her, which means he's definitely not asleep. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, neither wanting the night to end. Then Amara turned and walked back inside the mansion. Ji-Hoon remained on the balcony, watching her disappear through the glass doors. A few minutes later, the peaceful silence was shattered. A scream echoed through the estate. Ji-Hoon spun around instantly. A security alarm exploded throughout the estate. Red emergency lights flashed across the grounds. Footsteps echoed through the halls. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Seconds later, Mr. Choi came running toward them. His face had gone completely pale. Ji-Hoon immediately knew. What happened? Mr. Choi struggled to catch his breath. Then he delivered the words that made his blood run cold. Amara is gone. The world stopped. Ji-Hoon stared at him. What? The security cameras were disabled. The panic spread through the estate. Guards rushed in every direction. Phones rang. Orders were shouted. And then they found it. A single note left behind by the kidnappers. The message contained only one sentence. If you want her back alive, prepare to lose everything. As Ji-Hoon stared at the photograph on his phone, his entire body went still. Amara was tied to a chair in a dark room. Her hands were bound. Her face showed signs of struggle. But that wasn't what shocked him most. It was the man standing behind her. A man he recognized immediately. A man who was supposed to be dead. Kim Tae-sung. For a moment, Ji-Hoon couldn't believe what he was seeing. 5 years ago, Tae-sung had disappeared after a violent war between rival criminal organizations. Everyone believed he had died, including Ji-Hoon. Yet there he was, alive, and holding the woman Ji-Hoon loved.
The phone rang.
Ji-Hoon answered instantly. Tae-sung. A cold laugh echoed through the speaker. It's been a long time. The voice was unmistakable.
Real. Alive.
What do you want?
Ji-Hoon asked.
Another laugh. You already know. Ji-Hoon's grip tightened around the phone. This is between you and me. Nothing is only between us anymore. The line went silent for a second. Then Tae-sung continued. You took everything from me. Ji-Hoon's eyes narrowed. You're wrong.
No.
The anger in Tae-sung's voice was impossible to miss. You destroyed my future. I buried friends because of you. I lost my empire because of you. And now it's your turn to lose something. The call ended, leaving only silence behind. Meanwhile, Amara sat alone in a cold warehouse. Her wrists hurt from the ropes. The room smelled of dust and metal. A single light hung from the ceiling. Everything else remained hidden in shadows. Fear sat heavily in her chest. Not for herself. For Malik. She prayed he was safe. She prayed Ji-Hoon wouldn't do anything reckless. Because she knew him. And she knew exactly what he would do. Anything. No matter the cost. A door opened. Tae-sung entered slowly. He studied her for a moment. You must be special. Amara remained silent. He smiled. Do you know how many people Ji-Hoon has sacrificed over the years?
Still, she said nothing.
Because she wasn't interested in his stories. She only wanted to get home to her son. Taesung pulled up a chair and sat down. He never told you everything, did he? Amara finally looked at him. What do you want from him? The smile disappeared. Justice. The answer came immediately, as if he had been waiting years to say it. Back at the estate, every available resource had been activated. Security teams, private investigators, trusted allies. Everyone was searching. The mansion felt more like a military command center than a home. Maps covered tables. Phones rang constantly. People rushed through hallways. Yet none of it felt fast enough. Ji-Hoon stood in the middle of it all. Quiet, focused, dangerously calm. The kind of calm that appeared just before a storm. Mr. Choi approached carefully. We've traced part of the signal. Ji-Hoon looked up immediately. Where? We're not sure yet. Frustration flashed across his face. Not sure wasn't good enough. Not when every minute mattered. Then another voice interrupted. A small voice.
Dad.
The room went silent. Ji-Hoon turned around. Malik stood in the doorway, holding his favorite toy, looking confused and scared. For a moment, Ji-Hoon forgot about everything else. The war, the kidnapping, the threats. All he saw was his son. Come here. Malik walked over. His eyes searched the room. Where's Mom? The question hit harder than any bullet ever could. Ji-Hoon crouched down in front of him. She's okay. Then why isn't she home? Ji-Hoon struggled to answer. Because children deserved honesty. But some truths were too heavy. Especially for a 5-year-old. She's away right now. Malik frowned. When is she coming back? Ji-Hoon placed a hand on his shoulder. Soon. The little boy looked unconvinced. Promise? Ji-Hoon felt his throat tighten, because he wasn't sure. But he nodded anyway. I promise. Malik hugged him tightly. And in that moment, Ji-Hoon made another promise. One he didn't say aloud. He would bring Amara home, no matter what it cost. Late that night, a new message arrived. This time it was a video. Ji-Hoon opened it immediately. Amara appeared on the screen.
Tired. Frightened.
But unharmed. Then Taesung stepped into view. He looked directly into the camera. If you want her back alive, surrender your empire. The room became silent. Everyone knew what he was asking. Not money. Not property. Everything. His businesses. His influence. His power. The empire Ji-Hoon had spent years building. Taesung smiled. You have 48 hours. The video ended. Mr. Choi looked at him. You can't seriously consider this. Ji-Hoon didn't answer. Because he was considering it. For the first time in years, power didn't matter. Money didn't matter. Control didn't matter. Only one thing mattered. Amara. And the family he had finally found. The next morning, Ji-Hoon received a surprise visitor. An old ally. Someone who had once fought alongside Taesung. The man carried information. Dangerous information. After hearing it, Ji-Hoon's expression changed immediately. What did you say? The visitor nodded. It's true. Ji-Hoon's heart pounded. Because everything he believed about the past was suddenly being questioned. Taesung wasn't simply seeking revenge. There was another reason. A much darker reason. One connected to a secret buried years ago. A secret powerful enough to destroy multiple empires. And now, Amara had accidentally become part of it. The situation was no longer just about revenge. It was about something much bigger. Something far more dangerous. Ji-Hoon looked at the map spread across his desk. Then, at the photograph of Amara. His decision was made. He wasn't surrendering. He wasn't negotiating. And he wasn't walking away. He was going to bring her home. Even if it meant walking straight into a trap. Using new intelligence, Ji-Hoon finally located the warehouse where Amara was being held. But when his team examined the building plans, they discovered a terrifying truth. The entire place had been rigged with explosives. And someone was waiting for him inside. The room fell silent as the information sank in. Several members of the team exchanged worried looks. Mr. Choi was the first to speak. It's a trap. Ji-Hoon nodded. I know. If you go in there, Taesung gets exactly what he wants. I know. Then don't go. Ji-Hoon looked up. His expression was calm, determined, the expression of a man who had already made his decision. Amara is in there. Nobody argued after that, because they all knew there was no stopping him. Meanwhile, Amara had lost track of time. Hours felt like days. Days felt like weeks. The warehouse remained cold and dark. The only thing keeping her going was the thought of Malik. His smile. His laugh. The way he always wrapped his little arms around her before bedtime. She refused to believe this was how her story would end. A door creaked open. Taesung entered again. This time, he looked strangely relaxed, almost satisfied.
You seem happy, Amara said.
Taesung smiled. I finally get to finish something I started years ago. Amara stared at him. Whatever happened between you and Ji-Hoon, it doesn't justify this. The smile disappeared. Instantly. You know nothing about what happened.
His voice was colder now.
Filled with old wounds, old anger, years of hatred. Amara remained silent, because she could see it clearly. This wasn't really about power anymore. This was about pain. Pain that had been allowed to grow for too long. Back at the command center, Ji-Hoon prepared for what could be the most dangerous operation of his life. Weapons were checked. Routes were mapped. Escape plans were created. Every detail mattered, because one mistake could cost lives. Mr. Choi approached him privately. There's something I need to ask. Ji-Hoon looked up. If things go wrong... Mr. Choi hesitated. Promise me you'll think about Malik. The words hit hard, because for the first time, Ji-Hoon realized something. He wasn't only fighting for Amara anymore. He was fighting for his son. A little boy waiting for both of his parents to come home. A little boy who deserved a family. Ji-Hoon nodded slowly. I'll come back. Mr. Choi wasn't sure if that was a promise or a hope. Night had fallen by the time Ji-Hoon's convoy reached the abandoned industrial district. Rain poured from the sky. Thunder rolled overhead. The warehouse stood alone in the darkness. Silent. Waiting. It felt less like a building and more like a battlefield. Ji-Hoon stepped out of the vehicle. His team moved into position. Every entrance was covered. Every possible escape route monitored. The operation began. Inside the warehouse, Taesung received the alert. A small smile appeared on his face. He's here. One of his men nodded. What do we do? Taesung looked toward the room where Amara was being held. We finish it. The first explosion shook the building. Dust rained from the ceiling. Amara jumped in fear. Outside, chaos erupted. Gunfire echoed through the night. Men shouted orders. Vehicles screeched. The war had begun. Ji-Hoon pushed forward with his team. Every second mattered. Every hallway could be his last. Yet he never slowed down. His mind focused on only one thing: finding Amara. Minutes later, he finally reached her room. The door burst open. Amara looked up. For a second, neither moved. Neither spoke. Relief flooded both of them. Ji-Hoon. Her voice cracked. He rushed toward her and cut the ropes. The moment she stood, she threw her arms around him. For a brief second, the war outside disappeared. Nothing else mattered. They were together.
Alive.
But the moment didn't last. A slow clap echoed through the room. They turned. Taesung stood in the doorway, holding a gun. His eyes never left Ji-Hoon. Touching. The tension in the room became unbearable. Years of hatred stood face to face. This was the moment everything had been leading toward. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then Taesung spoke. You know what hurts the most? Ji-Hoon remained silent. The truth. Taesung laughed bitterly. All these years, I blamed you. The confession surprised everyone, even Ji-Hoon. But the people who destroyed my family weren't you. His grip tightened on the weapon. They were the men I trusted. The room went silent. Because deep down, Taesung had known the truth for years. But hatred had been easier than acceptance. Easier than grief. Easier than facing reality. Tears filled his eyes. Not from weakness. From exhaustion. Years of revenge had left him empty. Broken. Alone. The man standing before them wasn't a king. He was a prisoner of his own anger. Then everything happened at once. One of Taesung's men rushed into the room. Boss! The building shook violently. Another explosion, larger than the first. The explosives were becoming unstable. Everyone suddenly realized the same thing. The entire warehouse was about to collapse. Panic spread. Men began running, shouting, trying to escape. Taesung looked around, confused, terrified. The situation had spiraled beyond anyone's control. For a brief moment, Ji-Hoon saw something unexpected. Fear. Real fear. Not in an enemy, in a human being. Without thinking, he grabbed Taesung's arm. Move. Taesung stared at him. What? Move. Another explosion rocked the building. The ceiling cracked. Pieces of concrete crashed to the floor. There was no more time. The war was over. Now it was simply survival. Together, they ran. Through smoke. Through falling debris. Through chaos. Toward the exit. Just as they reached safety, a massive explosion tore through the warehouse behind them. The force threw everyone to the ground. The night sky lit up with flames. The battle was finally over. The empire built on revenge had fallen. And with it, years of hatred. As emergency crews arrived, Amara searched desperately through the crowd. Then she found him, Ji-Hoon, lying on the ground, unconscious. Blood stained his shirt. Her heart stopped. Ji-Hoon. She dropped beside him. Tears streamed down her face. He had saved her. Saved everyone. But now he wasn't moving. Paramedics rushed forward. Voices blurred together. The world seemed to spin around her. All she could do was hold his hand. And pray. Because the man she loved was fighting for his life. Hours later, doctors emerged from the operating room. Amara immediately stood up. Her legs felt weak. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it. For what felt like forever, she searched the surgeon's face for answers. The expression wasn't easy to read, and that terrified her. Doctor? She asked quietly. The surgeon removed his mask. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then he finally smiled. The surgery was successful. Amara nearly collapsed with relief. Tears instantly filled her eyes. He's alive? The doctor nodded. He's alive. The words hit her like a wave. Everything she had been holding inside finally broke free. The fear, the stress, the pain. All of it. She covered her face as tears rolled down her cheeks. For the first time since the kidnapping, she could breathe again. The next few days felt endless. Ji-Hoon remained unconscious as his body recovered. Amara rarely left the hospital. She sat beside his bed for hours, sometimes talking to him, sometimes simply holding his hand, even when there was no response. One evening, Malik visited the hospital. The little boy climbed onto a chair beside the bed. He stared quietly at his father. Why is Dad sleeping so much? Amara forced a smile. Because he's tired. Malik nodded thoughtfully. Then he leaned closer. You can wake up now. The innocent comment made everyone in the room laugh softly, even through their tears. Malik reached for Ji-Hoon's hand. We're waiting for you. Then something happened. A small movement, almost too small to notice. Ji-Hoon's fingers twitched. Amara froze. Ji-Hoon. His eyelids slowly opened. The room went silent. For a moment, he looked confused, disoriented. Then his eyes found Amara. And finally Malik. A weak smile appeared. I'm guessing I missed breakfast. The room exploded with laughter and tears. Amara couldn't stop crying. Malik immediately climbed onto the bed and hugged him. Carefully, gently, as if afraid he might disappear again. Ji-Hoon wrapped an arm around his son, holding him close. And in that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the empire, not the money, not the battles. Only family. Weeks later, Ji-Hoon was finally discharged from the hospital. The recovery wasn't easy. Doctors ordered rest, something Ji-Hoon had never been good at. Fortunately, Malik took his new role very seriously. You have to listen to the doctor. Ji-Hoon smiled. Yes, boss. No running. Okay. No fighting bad guys. Ji-Hoon laughed. I'll try. Malik folded his arms. You promise. I promise. For the first time in years, the mansion felt different. Warmer, lighter, filled with life. As Ji-Hoon recovered, he began making changes. Major changes. Some shocked his closest advisors. Others shocked the entire underworld. He stepped away from many of the criminal operations that had controlled his life for years. Trusted people were placed in charge of legitimate businesses. Several dangerous alliances were permanently ended. For the first time, Ji-Hoon was choosing peace. Not because he was weak, but because he finally understood what mattered. Power had given him wealth, but family gave him purpose. One evening, several months later, Ji-Hoon asked Amara to meet him on the estate's private garden terrace, the same place where they often watched the sunset together. Amara arrived expecting a normal conversation. Instead, she found candles glowing softly around the garden. Fresh flowers lined the pathway. Her heart immediately began racing. Ji-Hoon stood waiting, looking nervous, a sight she had never seen before. "You look worried," she teased. "I am." That surprised her. The powerful billionaire, who faced armed enemies without fear, looked genuinely nervous. Ji-Hoon took a slow breath, then reached into his pocket. Amara's eyes widened. "Ji-Hoon." He smiled. 5 years ago, he had walked away from her without knowing she carried his child. 5 years ago, fate had separated them. Now fate was giving them another chance. Slowly, he lowered himself onto one knee. The world seemed to stop. "Amara." His voice was steady, but emotional. "You gave me the greatest gift I've ever received." Tears immediately filled her eyes. "You gave me a son." Ji-Hoon looked toward the mansion where Malik was undoubtedly causing trouble somewhere. Both of them laughed softly. Then he looked back at her. "And you gave me a second chance." His eyes shone with emotion. "I don't deserve everything you've forgiven."
He paused.
"But if you'll let me." He opened the small ring box. "I'd like to spend the rest of my life making up for it." Amara was already crying. The answer had lived in her heart for a long time. "Yes." Ji-Hoon blinked. "What?" She laughed through her tears. "Yes." The smile that spread across his face was impossible to miss. A moment later, he slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms and kissed her, not as two people finding each other, but as two people finally coming home. 6 months later, family and friends gathered in Seoul for a beautiful wedding. It wasn't the extravagant event many expected from a billionaire. It was something far more meaningful, personal, intimate, filled with love. As Amara walked down the aisle, Ji-Hoon couldn't take his eyes off her. For the first time in years, there was no fear, no danger, no enemies waiting in the shadows, only happiness. And standing proudly between them was Malik, the happiest little boy in the world. 1 year later, the family sat together in the garden of their home. Malik ran across the lawn laughing. His energy seemed endless. Amara smiled as she watched him, then gently rested a hand on her stomach. Ji-Hoon immediately noticed. His eyes widened. "Really?" Amara nodded. A smile spread across her face. "Really?" For a moment, neither spoke. Then Ji-Hoon laughed, the kind of laugh that came from pure happiness. He wrapped his arms around her. As Malik raced toward them, "What's happening?" Ji-Hoon grinned. "You might be getting promoted." Malik looked confused. Then his eyes widened. "To Big Brother?" Everyone laughed. And just like that, the family grew a little bigger, a little stronger, a little happier. Sometimes life changes because of a single night, a single choice, a single moment. For Amara and Ji-Hoon, that night had brought heartbreak, separation, danger, and years of unanswered questions. But it had also brought something far greater: a son, a second chance, and a love strong enough to survive everything life placed in its path. Because in the end, the greatest treasure a billionaire ever discovered wasn't power, money, or influence. It was family.